There are 36 gubernatorial races on the ballot in the 2026 midterms, with Democrats and Republicans each defending 18 seats, including contests in nearly every key presidential battleground. 15 incumbent governors are ineligible to run again due to term limits. Among them is Democrat Laura Kelly in Kansas, leaving her party vulnerable in a state Donald Trump carried by 16 points last November. Democrats will also have to defend Gretchen Whitmer's seat in Michigan, another state Trump won in the 2024 presidential race. Meanwhile, Republicans will be playing defense in the swing state Georgia. Let's start by filling in the map with the races that are currently considered safe for each party. For Democrats, that starts with California, where Governor Gavin Newsom is stepping down after 2 terms. Whether it's Kamala Harris returning to state politics or another Democrat stepping up, the Golden State remains solidly blue, and Republicans simply don't have a strong enough bench to make this race competitive. Elsewhere, Democrats have incumbents running for re-election in Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. All 5 states backed Kamala Harris by double-digit margins in 2024, and each of these governors currently enjoys strong approval ratings. That's not quite the case in Rhode Island, where Democratic Governor Daniel McKee holds a net approval of just plus 2%, with 43% of voters approving and 41% disapproving, ranking him among the least popular governors in the country. Still, as is often the case in institutionally blue states like Rhode Island, Republicans don't have a credible challenger to take advantage. It's also worth keeping in mind that the 2026 cycle should be relatively favorable for Democrats. Historically, the party out of power in the White House tends to perform well in the first midterm, and this will be the first major national election since President Trump returned to office. The final safe blue state is Colorado. Incumbent Jared Polis is term limited, but U.S. Senator Michael Bennet has already launched a bid for the seat, effectively closing the door on any slim chance Republicans had of competing here. That locks in 8 safe governorships for Democrats this cycle, bringing their total to 13 when you include the 5 states where no gubernatorial race is taking place. On the Republican side, they'll be defending seats with incumbents in the ruby red states of Idaho, South Dakota, Nebraska, Arkansas, Texas, and yes, even deep blue Vermont. That's Phil Scott's seat. Year after year, he ranks as the most popular governor in the country, and in 2024, he won re-election by over 50 points. Granted, as a Vermont Republican, he's arguably to the left of many Oklahoma Democrats, but his dominance is still notable, especially considering Vermont has given Democrats their largest margin of victory in every presidential election over the last decade. Now, as for the states where Republicans won't have an incumbent running, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Alabama, it simply doesn't matter. These 4 states each back Trump by more than 30 percentage points, respectively, placing them among the 10 most Republican states in the country. There is an outside chance that the races in South Carolina or Florida become competitive, but that would likely require a major scandal on the Republican side or a particularly strong Democratic challenger. So for now, they round out the GOP's list of safe seats, bringing Republicans to a total of 21 when adding these 12 to the 9 governorships they hold that aren't up for election this cycle. That leaves us with 16 competitive races, though they still vary in their degree of lean toward one party or the other. Let's continue on with our likely states, defined as those with a strong lean toward one side, but where an upset is still possible. First up, New Hampshire. Like its neighbor, Vermont, the Granite State elects its governors every 2 years, and those races tend to lean more Republican than the state's federal contests. New Hampshire has voted for the Democratic presidential nominee in 6 consecutive elections, but always by narrow single-digit margins. And it hasn't elected a Republican U.S. Senator since 2010. Yet, newly elected Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte is a strong incumbent. She significantly overperformed expectations in 2024, winning the governorship by 9 points, even as Kamala Harris carried the state by 3. All 3 expert ratings currently have New Hampshire as at least likely Republican, with inside elections even going as far as to call it a safe bet. I'm leaning more toward likely for now as we wait to see who Democrats nominate to take on Ayotte. Next is Oregon, where incumbent Democrat Tina Kotek ranks among the least popular governors in the country, with a net approval of just +4. That being said, from a fundamental standpoint, Kamala Harris won Oregon by 14 percentage points last November, and it saw one of the smallest pro-Trump swings in the country since 2020. So even with Kotek's weak numbers, it would take a seriously strong Republican challenger to make this race competitive. The other two likely Republican seats are in Kansas and Alaska. Kansas, notably, would be a flip. Trump won the state by 16 points in 2024, making it the GOP's top pickup opportunity on the entire map. Laura Kelly originally flipped the office from red to blue in 2018, benefiting from a national blue wave and widespread backlash to former Republican Governor Sam Brownback's deeply unpopular tenure. She managed to win re-election in 2022 thanks to strong personal approval ratings and the momentum surrounding the abortion rights referendum that year. But without Kelly's name on the ballot, Republicans are extremely well positioned. Both former Governor Jeff Colyer and Secretary of State Scott Schwab have emerged as strong early contenders, and I wouldn't be surprised if this race moves closer to safe Republican as we approach Election Day. In Alaska, former Democratic Congresswoman Mary Peltola is reportedly interested in running for governor after losing her House seat this past November. She's already proven she can win statewide, having done so as recently as 2022. I'd still give Republicans the edge here, likely with Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom as their nominee, but if Peltola jumps in, an upset wouldn't be out of the question, especially if signs of a significant blue wave begin to emerge. Now shifting to the likely blue column for the Democrats, in Minnesota, incumbent Governor Tim Walz is expected to seek a third term, fresh off some national exposure. He's not the strongest incumbent on the map, but holding the office still gives him a clear edge in a state that's been as reliably blue as any in modern political history. Granted, recent statewide elections in Minnesota have almost always been decided by single-digit margins, but with no strong Republican challenger currently in the field, every major forecaster has Walz and the Democrats as clear favorites heading into 2026. The dynamics are nearly identical in Maine and in New Mexico, where both Democratic incumbents are term limited. Despite being quite different demographically, they have followed strikingly similar voting trends in recent cycles. Kamala Harris carried Maine by 7 points and New Mexico by 6. 4 years earlier, Biden won Maine by 9 and New Mexico by 11. Both the Cook Political Report and Sabato's Crystal Ball give these races a likely Democrat rating. Then there's Pennsylvania, a perennial battleground, almost always among the most competitive states on the map. But not this time. Incumbent Josh Shapiro is running for re-election with one of the strongest approval ratings in the country and a proven track record of overperformance. He won his first term by a 15-point landslide during the 2022 midterms, a result that may be hard to replicate against better competition than Doug Mastriano, but still leaves Pennsylvania firmly in the likely blue column for now. Finally, there's New York, historically one of the most reliable blue states in the nation, but not anymore. It saw the largest pro-Trump shift of any state between 2020 and 2024, signaling real vulnerability for Democrats in a place they've long taken for granted. Governor Kathy Hochul, already among the 10 least popular governors in the country, now faces mounting pressure from within her own party. Her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, has entered the race to challenge her in the Democratic primary. And while she leads by a wide margin in these early surveys, Republicans are watching the infighting closely. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik has signaled that she intends to run for governor in 2026, with an announcement all but pending. The most recent survey from Siena College shows her leading potential rivals, Congressman Mike Lawler and Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, by a wide margin, and President Trump has hinted that he'd prefer the field to clear for Stefanik to secure the nomination. That's not necessarily good news for the New York GOP. Lawler would likely be a much stronger general election candidate. According to Split Ticket's wins above replacement scores, Stefanik is an average performer relative to expectations, whereas Lawler ranks well above average. But even without Lawler, recent history gives the GOP some reason for optimism. In 2022, relatively unknown Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin came within 7 points of defeating Hochul, earning more raw votes than any GOP candidate since 1970 and posting the party's best percentage since 2002. That said, this is still New York. Republicans haven't won a major statewide race here in over 2 decades, and Kamala Harris carried the state by 12.5 points in 2024. But for the first time in a long time, both parties are treating this race like it's in play. So that leaves just 7 more states without a rating. Republicans are currently favored to hold 24 governorships ahead of the Democrats' 19. Let's go through the lean states, starting with Iowa, where incumbent Kim Reynolds is retiring. That would usually be a problem for Republicans, except Reynolds is actually the most unpopular governor in the country. That's according to Morning Consult, whose data shows just 44% of Iowans approve of her job performance, while 49% disapprove. That disapproval figure is 5 points higher than any other sitting governor. So in a way, Reynolds stepping aside may actually be a blessing in disguise for Republicans, especially considering Democrats are likely to nominate a very strong candidate in State Auditor Rob Sand, who remains the only Democrat to win a statewide election in Iowa this decade. If not for Iowa's sharp Republican shift in recent cycles, Democrats would be in a very strong position here. But the reality is that Iowa is a very red state now. Trump carried it by 13 points last November. That's what keeps this race firmly in the lean Republican category for now. Ohio presents a similar dynamic. It followed a nearly identical trend over the past 2 decades, shifting from an Obama coalition swing state to swinging sharply toward Trump in 2016, then backing him by strong margins again in both 2020 and 2024. Looking ahead to the 2026 governor's race, incumbent Mike DeWine is term limited, and Vivek Ramaswamy is widely expected to secure the Republican nomination, but I anticipate he'll be a below-average general election candidate. If former Congressman Tim Ryan decides to enter the race, or perhaps even former Senator Sherrod Brown, this one could quickly become highly competitive. Until then, though, Ohio hovers on the edge between likely and leans Republican. Alrighty, now that leaves us with just 5 more races still to be determined. In the Rust Belt, we've got Michigan, with Democratic incumbent Gretchen Whitmer term limited. This race is expected to be one of the most competitive of the cycle. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson appears to have the inside track for the Democratic nomination, with former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg declining to run. Meanwhile, Republicans got their best news of the cycle when Congressman John James announced his bid for governor. James is about as strong a general election candidate as Republicans could hope for in Michigan, effectively neutralizing the advantage Democrats usually enjoy as incumbents in a state with a roughly even partisan lean. That said, there's a major third-party wildcard here. Independent Mike Duggan, the mayor of Detroit since 2014. Duggan is a rare example of a big city mayor with high approval ratings, and his statewide name recognition alone gives him a strong base of support. Right now, he's pulling in around 20% of the vote across the 4 polls that have tested a 3-way race between Benson, James, and Duggan. Benson has led in all 4, but by 5 points or less in each of the last 3. All 3 forecasters have the race down as a toss-up, while the prediction market, Kalshi, has Benson clearly favored with a 73% chance of winning. Personally, I've got Michigan in the tilt Democrat column, but make no mistake, it's basically a coin flip at this point. Then there's Wisconsin, where incumbent Democrat Tony Evers is eligible to seek a 3rd term, though he has yet to officially announce his intentions. If he does run, Democrats would start with a clear advantage. Wisconsin's partisan lean is about as evenly split as it gets. 5 of the last 7 presidential elections here have been decided by less than a point, including each of the last 3. Trump most recently carried the state by just 0.8%. The last two U.S. Senate races, in 2022 and 2024, were also decided by margins under a single percentage point. Still, Evers overperformed in his 2022 re-election, defeating Republican Tim Michels by 3.5 points, despite trailing in most pre-election polling. That kind of overperformance is a strong data point for Democrats, assuming Evers decides to run again. For now, I've got Wisconsin rated as lean Democratic, particularly given the absence of a clear Republican frontrunner at this stage. Now let's head down south to Georgia. With Republican Governor Brian Kemp term limited, this race, much like Michigan, is shaping up to be one of the most closely watched of the cycle. Georgia remains one of the most competitive states in presidential politics and continues to trend just slightly to the left of the national average. But when it comes to state-level races, the GOP still holds the edge. In the 2022 midterms, Republicans swept every statewide office, winning by margins ranging from 5 to 10 points. The party also maintains control of both chambers of the Georgia legislature. As for the 2026 governor's race, both primary fields remain wide open. On the Republican side, State Attorney General Chris Carr and Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones have both declared their candidacies, with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene publicly expressing interest in entering the race as well. Either Greene or Jones would likely be the favorite for a Trump endorsement, especially given that while Carr condemned the January 6th attack, both Greene and Jones have remained staunch Trump allies in the years since. On the Democratic side, former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is currently the most prominent name in the mix, but she's far from a clear favorite. Two-time nominee Stacey Abrams is reportedly considering a third run, along with Congresswoman Lucy McBath. There's also a recent report saying that former Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan is weighing a run as a Democrat. Long story short, the general election outlook is very murky at this point, with no substantive polling in either primary just yet. Fundamentally, Republicans hold a slight edge as the incumbent party, especially considering Georgia's recent lean in statewide politics. But if they were to nominate Marjorie Taylor Greene, the dynamic could shift dramatically in Democrats' favor. For now, I'm placing Georgia in the tilt Republican column, though much like Michigan, it's effectively a toss-up. All right, let's wrap things up in the Southwest with Nevada and Arizona. In Nevada, Republican Governor Joe Lombardo enters 2026 with solid approval ratings and plans to run for re-election, riding the momentum of a significant rightward shift in the state's politics. Trump carried Nevada by over 3 points in 2024, becoming the first Republican to win the state at the presidential level since 2004. Lombardo's own win in 2022, when he unseated Democratic Governor Steve Sisolak, was one of the first signs that Nevada was trending red. Now, Sisolak has told the New York Times he's weighing a comeback, just months after Attorney General Aaron Ford announced his candidacy. If neither drops out, Democrats could face a major primary showdown, one that would almost certainly benefit Lombardo by giving him a head start in messaging, fundraising, and building out his campaign infrastructure. Even without that advantage, I'd still give Lombardo the edge as the incumbent, especially with strong approval ratings in a state where momentum clearly favors the GOP. That said, if Democrats perform well nationally in 2026, Nevada could easily revert back to its Democratic roots. It remains one of the most competitive states in the country. Now on to Arizona, another great opportunity for Republicans after it also shifted hard to the right in 2024, handing Trump a 5.5-point win. Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs's approval rating is solid, if unremarkable. She narrowly defeated Kari Lake in 2022, but Lake proved to be a deeply flawed candidate, something she reinforced with her terrible performance in the 2024 Senate race. This time around, Republicans are choosing between Congressman Andy Biggs and former gubernatorial candidate Karen Taylor Robson, who earned co-endorsements from Donald Trump earlier this year. Robson would be a much stronger general election candidate. Biggs is one of the most conservative members of the House and could struggle statewide, considering Arizona voters have rejected far-right candidates before, most notably Lake and Blake Masters. But it is Biggs who is leading, according to both the polls and the prediction markets. He has led Taylor Robson by more than 20 points in all 4 public surveys. And according to the betting market, Kalshi, he has about a 55% chance of securing the nomination. That does give Hobbs a slight edge in my mind, as I think Biggs will be a below replacement level candidate. So with that, I project Republicans to hold 28 governorships after the 2026 midterms compared to the Democrats' 22. That reflects a net 1-seat gain for the GOP, as they are very likely to flip Kansas. Otherwise, every other seat is expected to go in favor of the incumbent party at this point. That is almost certain to change over the next 16 months before Election Day. As always, drop your thoughts on this analysis in the comments below. Shout out to my channel members listed in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Check out more of my content here. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.